Guys, welcome to my review of Dune Prophecy Episode 4. Wow, guys, whether you loved it or you hated it, that was a huge episode. Some massive things happened. We got some big reveals, so let's jump right into it. Straight off the bat, guys, I got a lot of criticism for my review of Episode 3, and if you haven't seen my reviews of the first 3 episodes, you can click on the card above to watch all of those. But guys, I still stand by what I said. I don't think Sisterhood Above All was a good episode in my taste, but I'll get into that a little bit later in the video, because that feeling completely changes with this episode, Twiceborn. Guys, I've got to say, this episode was everything that I wanted from this series, guys. I thought it was really great. A lot of the plot threads that they've been sewing started to come together and connect in really exciting ways, and there was a really good balance of drama and plot with exciting visual spectacle. That's what we want, guys. Dune is back, baby. Dune Prophecy is officially back. And you know why it's back, guys? Because we got freaking sandworms in this episode. We got the Shai-Hulud, baby. And I freaking love to see that. You know, I know a lot of guys are probably going to watch this video and go,
oh, this guy's a casual fan. He only knows Dune from the movies. He only knows Dune as Arrakis, the desert planet.
But guys, I'm not going to apologize. I freaking like sandworms, man. And they were in this episode. But nah, in all seriousness, overall, this was a really good episode, guys. Let's get into a recap of what happened. So the episode starts off with seeing all the sisters back at the Sisterhood having the same really scary, intense dream. Tula tries to get them to recall this dream, and they all end up drawing images of the Shai-Hulud and the creepy blue AI eyes that we've seen across the series. Valya is off visiting her old Harkonnen family members who she doesn't like very much, and she's offering her services as a truthsayer to them. The reason for this is that she's trying to manipulate them into requesting an inquest into the death of Pruitt. That's the kid that Desmond cooked in the last episode. And her plan is to get into the High Council meeting where she knows the rebels are going to try and assassinate everyone, foil the plot in front of Emperor Corrino to prove the Sisterhood's value to him and try and wrestle back some control over the whole Imperium. But before her plans can come to fruition, Princess Inez actually betrays her father, Emperor Corrino, and confesses to everyone that Desmond was behind killing Pruitt. Then Desmond confesses to this, saying that it was an execution because Pruitt was using the thinking machines, and then he actually marches out all these captured rebels who were behind the plot to blow up the High Council using AI technology. He looks over at Emperor Corrino and asks him to give the order, and then Desmond, he cooks all of these guys like a snag at Bunnings, and you just watch them all brutally burn from the inside. It was an epic end to the episode, guys. Valya's plan, it doesn't really work because Desmond proves himself in front of the entire High Council by killing all these people that were in a plot to kill all of them. And now Emperor Corrino just trusts him even more. And on top of that, then at the end of the episode, we see Tula, who's sitting with Lila, who's on that like AI cryo sleep. She actually wakes up and she's still alive. So to go into my thoughts, guys, we also got the huge reveal that Desmond seems to be somehow harnessing the power of those scary blue eyes that everyone seems to be seeing. He's somehow harnessing that power when he does that whole mind cooking thing. So all of that seems to be connected to the thinking machines and the AI, which makes me think that maybe somehow Desmond is either being controlled by the thinking machines, he's getting his power from the thinking machines, maybe he does know, maybe he doesn't know. I think somehow he's strongly connected to them, and he might be putting on some kind of deceptive front saying, oh yeah, we've got to do whatever it takes to get rid of the thinking machines, when actually he might be working for them. The thing that still confuses me is how this all connects to Desmond being eaten by a sandworm, how that somehow relates to him getting powers from the AI, what the AI has to do with Arrakis. All of that stuff's still a bit of a mystery to me. I also thought it was really interesting that it seems like Desmond actually has a limit to his powers. We saw here that after he cooked those 5 people, he was like bleeding, and then we saw him shirtless afterwards, and he had all these scars and wounds on his back. So it looks like every time he uses the power, it damages him. So that's really interesting because that answers a question in my earlier reviews about why doesn't Desmond just go and kill everyone, because it seems like it actually takes a significant physical toll on him. And as part of this, when he's walking away out of the High Council chamber, we actually see Valya get a sample of his blood, so she's going to be able to go off and try and figure out where he's come from and who he actually is. I just love how it finally feels like the setup, the heavy setup from the first few episodes that a lot of people complain about is actually starting to pay off. And on top of that, we're also actually starting to get a really good idea of how the Sisterhood and Mother Superior just manipulate and try and do what they can behind the scenes to gain power over everyone. The involvement of the whole rebel plot was done really well here. The politics between Desmond and House Corrino and how they're trying to maintain power over the whole Imperium and how the different houses are all trying to influence that. The scheming, the politics with House Harkonnen, seeing their origins as this like weaker house before we all know what they turn into. All of that's just so interesting, and in my opinion, it works together really, really well. But look guys, this brings me back to the point that I mentioned earlier. Last week's episode was still really unnecessary. Yes, it did add depth to Valya's feelings when she goes back to visit the Harkonnens, her connection with Tula, and the feud between the Atreides and the Harkonnens, but in that actual episode itself, it was done really poorly, because I still believe you could watch this entire episode 4, you could have skipped episode 3, and you still would have got just as much as someone who has actually watched episode 3. If anything, all the stuff with Griffin, Valya's brother, in this episode and all those family dynamics, all of that stuff would have added a bunch of intrigue with all the hints that they dropped, and then if I was the showrunner, I would have put last week's episode 3 after this episode, just swap the order around, and then I don't think I would have had as much of a problem with episode 3. I think I would have actually enjoyed it, because my overall point the whole time was that going through episode 3, you just didn't really have a reason to watch it, to understand it. It just seemed like superfluous information. Now we're actually starting to see a bit more of how that previous filler backstory influences the current overall plot of the series. It's much more interesting to understand that. Like, I'm curious to know more about Griffin, more about the Harkonnens, and seeing their family in the present. If I was to rewatch episode 3, I'd probably enjoy it a lot more. So I really think they should have changed the order there. People were clowning on me, saying that I have no idea about storytelling, and saying that I was saying that character development is filler. No, that's not what I was saying. I was saying that it came across as superfluous and filler because we had no reason or no momentum to actually understand what we were watching. But after this episode, you do. So please, guys, don't come on here and tell me that I'm a grifter, that I'm just trying to stir up controversy, that I'm just trying to be negative about any new thing that comes out. That's not the case. I really hope you can also tell that if you watch my overall videos on this channel, if you go and watch my reviews for episode 1 and 2, I just try and bring an honest critique and my personal emotions to how I feel about watching the show. I'm not here just to come and try and add shock value and try and talk trash about new media. I want to enjoy this show, and overall, I want my opinions. I would hope that they'd be positive, but at the same time, I'm always going to be honest with you guys if I don't enjoy something. And the good thing is, this week, guys, I love this episode. I thought it was great. So let's be happy about that. And if you disagree with me, that's completely fine too. But instead of coming out and saying, like, I don't have a right to have an opinion because I'm dumb, just come out and say, like, how you actually disagree with me. And you know what? You might actually change my mind, because you might have some great points that I'm missing out on. So I would love to hear what you think down in the comments, guys. I was also worried for a second there at the start of the episode when the Corrinos were out the front having breakfast, and the CGI of like this island in the distance looked really dodgy. It kind of looked like the island from Fortnite. I was like, oh no, the budget really has ran out, like I said last week. But then, man, there were some CGI shots, like space shots, that I love so much, and you know, shots from high up in the atmosphere of different buildings on different planets in this episode, and it just looked stunning. It looked brilliant, like so many other things in this series. So yeah, that concern was completely unfounded. The show was back to looking like really high high budget, exciting, feeling like it was in the Dune universe. So yeah, I really liked that part of the episode as well. And also the soundtrack I thought was really good as well. It really helped elevate the tension, and I'm looking forward to going back and listening to it. And man, at the end, watching Desmond cook those guys, that was intense. Those deaths were brutal. Seeing them burn up from the inside, the actual effect and the VFX, it worked so well. So again, kudos to the showrunners. That part was really engaging and done really, really well. It'll probably give some kids nightmares if anyone's watching this at a young age. And if you were going to ask for my prediction, as somebody who still hasn't read the books, I think somehow Desmond is going to betray Emperor Corrino. I think he's got some kind of motive that we don't know about, or something that is somehow connected to the AI and what the AI is kind of trying to do. I think Lila might play a big role in how the sisters try and defeat Desmond now that she's come back to life. But at the same time, I'm wondering if she's been corrupted by this AI superpower that's manipulating things, because when she was in life support, it seemed to be powered by that same kind of evil technology. And overall, I do think that House Corrino are somehow going to lose their grip on power. I think Emperor Corrino and that whole family, and something bad might happen to them. But also at the same time, Desmond, even though, you know, he's pretty powerful, we've also seen his weakness in this episode. So I think somehow that's going to be exploited, whether he gets pushed too far, he tries to do too much and sort of destroys himself, or if someone else like the Sisterhood find a way to exploit that weakness. I also think the Harkonnens might play some kind of role in this, because if House Corrino goes down, I think the Sisterhood might be trying to manipulate who they can control the easiest, who's in power, so maybe reluctantly they might put the Harkonnens in charge of the Imperium, which will be interesting, but that's just a guess, guys. I really have no idea because, again, I haven't read the books. But hopefully you do find it interesting, my perspective as someone who hasn't read the books and my reactions. But hey, overall, guys, again, I thought that this was a great episode, and I know that, you know, I'm going back a little bit on what I said last week, but I'm happy to, because, again, I'd rather be positive than negative. And I actually have a lot more faith that they're going to stick the landing in this series. And maybe we're going to get a series 2. I think this episode, it actually makes the other episodes in the series so far better. It makes you more interested to potentially rewatch them at some stage. Did you watch this episode? What'd you think? Please consider dropping a like. If you want to see the rest of my reviews on this series or some other great film, TV content, guys, please consider subscribing. And I'll see you in the next one.